Thank you for coming to AuditBoard exclusive AI session, how AI is going to radically reshaping our risk audit compliance. So the first question is, I'm going to ask Melissa about what does AI mean to you in your is it in your company, your business? Has AI topic ever been surfaced up? And what's your view about AI, and should we adopt it?
We've seen it. We know how this ends. This isn't good. And especially when ChatGPT first started coming up and we started immediately seeing some of the risks realized, I had started asking around in my company and saying, hey guys, what are we doing about this? Have we addressed this? Are we doing anything? Have we blocked it? And they came back and went, we don't need to worry about that right now. I said, no, I'm not okay with that answer. So I actually, in a town hall, addressed it straight to my CEO and said, what are we doing about it and what are we doing now? Because we need to adopt it at some point, but not yet. We need to figure out how we're going to do this. The board of directors got a hold of that and said, shut it down. So that was the first response. And so now actually my company is going through the process of figuring out what is our AI strategy. Audit has a seat at that table, making sure of that. Looking at things like Bing Chat Enterprise and other things that are going to be able to say, certain things stay within us. It's not going to help the learning pieces of it, but we still get updates from the learning. Using AuditBoard. AuditBoard AI, we were one of the beta testers for them to help with writing controls and issues. So definitely on the generative part is where I think, because you can get down a big spiral when it comes to artificial intelligence in general. So if we specifically bring it into the generative AI space, that's where we're going to see that. And we're introducing it in little pieces. Most people, I think, are familiar with AI. They have been, like I said, if you have Siri, Google Assistant, Alexa, any of those, if your kids have played with any of the apps where you upload your photo and it generates you looking like a cool space, alien or something, all of that was AI and its introductions to it. So more people, I think, are aware of it than what they're even aware of. Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of just educating them. And I know we'll talk about education a little bit later when it comes to that piece of it.
Yeah. Matt, well, you work for OpenAI, obviously. I'm sure in your day-to-day work, you definitely have to do something with AI, right? You support a company mission. So how is AI being used in OpenAI, particularly in your department as a GRC leader? And what's the view if we don't adopt AI?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, my company's in a bit of a unique situation here in that I don't have to address a lot of the concerns you guys probably have around like data privacy and data security, because we do keep it all in-house for ourselves. But we are encouraged heavily to use our own models and to test the new models that are coming out, different iterations that are coming out constantly. OpenAI is half a research organization. So we're continually, I think, pushing the bar as far as technology goes. And there's a lot of really cool use cases. I think the probably most applicable ones to this group are going to be the easiest ones to start with, which are like the low risk impact use cases. These are things like using ChatGPT Teams, for example, using something as more of an iterative partner in your GRC process. This can be things like helping you develop a new maturity model or creating templates for emails for risk assessments. There's like thousands and thousands of possible use cases you can use. And when you think about how to effectively use these in a GRC context, one of the key things here is auditability. And it's really difficult at this point, and I don't think we're ready yet to have like a completely autonomous AI model taking over controls. You still need a human in the loop at this point. These models do have hallucinations and things like that, but especially for exploring the technology, getting your foot into the door, exploring some of these lower risk use cases where it's just starting the process for you or starting the control for you, and you still have a human there who can look and take a rational approach of understanding it. And Melissa talked a little bit about education, but that's going to be a key part, is make sure your employees understand that these are use case specific approvals for using this technology, and maybe you want to set up some sort of controls to monitor that on your side. Internally, we've had a lot of success using it. It's funny because I was talking to my team the other day, and even after working there for like a few months, most of them can't imagine going back to not using ChatGPT at all in their like day-to-day work. It just takes the effort out of doing that first draft, which sometimes can be the most difficult part when you're trying to write like a long memo or something like that. Getting somewhere to start with and working with it, and it's gotten so much better over time too at learning your writing style. You get better at communicating with it. What do you need to tell it? What words do you have to use? that reflect you personally. And so when you come out with an end product, it looks like something that you created rather than something spit out by ChatGPT.
Meeting notes. I'll tell you, we introduced it with meeting notes, and I got one meeting back, and I mean, the comprehensiveness of the meeting notes was just astronomical. And then I thought I had it turned on for the next one, and it wasn't, and I was like, crap, I really needed that. So yeah, I'm already seeing the reliance on it, and something like that.
Yeah, you see that a lot in industry now too. I can't tell you how many meetings I join with other companies now that they have like an AI join the meeting as well, and it's like transcribing it at the end. It sends out meeting notes to everybody in attendance.
And they are extremely comprehensive.
Yes, it's super convenient.
Yeah, it is.
Great, thank you for sharing the insights. So Anton, I know you are not GRC specialist like Melissa and Matt yet, but you are AI specialist. You definitely talk quite a bit with our beta customer. Can you share a little bit, what is AuditBoard AI? What do we try? What is some use cases, our vision to actually solve the problem in this GRC space?
Yeah, so sort of at AuditBoard, so the overarching AI vision is efficiency that's context relevant. Now, what does that mean? Well, I mean, sort of in talking to our customer base, our survey studies show that like auditors spend on average 500 plus hours writing, right? And so sort of imagine like in AI that like, hey, like at a click of a button whenever you want it, it gets you started. Now, gets you started how? Well, it gets you started sort of in your current workflow. So like when you're, drafting a control, when you're sort of writing out a description for a risk, you have an existing workflow. And then you start out by just having AI clicks a button and you have it. You have the beginnings there, right? It's not taking away agency, it's giving you that agency, giving you back that time. And then so you can imagine sort of starting it sort of that way and then moving on to, hey, what if, when you got started in adopting a new framework, if within compliance, or hey, you import a bunch of business process and you need to write up a bunch of stuff, write more narratives, just do it all at once and have a workflow around reviewing it, just again, keeping the practitioner, the auditor sort of in control. Now, sort of Matthew mentioned, it's not ready for full automation. And I think in our view, it never will be. Like sort of auditors, practitioners will always sort of want to sign off. Now, sign off for us means really two big aspects. One is how do you get set up, right? So there's a setup of like where and how the AI will sort of help you out. Now, you think about individuals sort of in their, like they may keep their current work, sort of their prompts, whatever it may be, but like with something like AuditBoard having more integrated, what that gives the end user actually gives the teams is ways of collaborating. So like you have, say, particular tone or style that, your team as a company wants to write in, right? You can add your person, every person can add their own, call it their own preferences to make it sound like, hey, they wrote that, but then we can also maintain consistency with the broader organization. On the back, so that's on sort of the setup to make sure like, hey, the AI works for you where and when you want it. And on the back end, there's UIs that allow you to validate, check that, hey, this is correct, right? This is correct, this is what you want. There are, and going sort of further there, it's not just a pure manual sort of review UI. AI can help here too. So like the hallucination problem that Matthew talked about, just think about say a narrative business process. It says data encryption. Data needs to be encrypted at rest. We can generate some type of text that says data is encrypted at rest with AES 256-bit encryption. That's a hallucination. We can build, we're building systems to detect that and flag that for the user. And that's explicit what's called a hallucination. Removal of information is equally dangerous. So like you imagine like where you start out with a more complicated statement and you take that away. And so, for AuditBoard, what we want to do is like leave the practitioner in full control and allow them to do more and more and more. Think about having that chasm between the work that keeps getting thrown your way versus, the staff and the resources and the time you have. And AI is, I think, where we believe we can help out there.
And I can speak to that because, like I said, we were a beta customer. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that's like, all of us in here, everybody's working extra hours, you get tired, and all of a sudden you've got to generate either a report or a control or an issue. And AuditBoard's great because it's got these little Tinkerbell, like,
Yeah.
little pixie dust things up there, and I hit the button and it says, gives you an idea. And you can read it and go, well, maybe not that one. And if I don't like it, regenerate. And I can keep doing that until I get something close to it, and then I can say accept, and then I still have the ability to go in and make it a little bit more context. But I'm not sitting here racking my brain for 30 minutes because I'm on my 11th hour of the day and I'm like, I just need to get this done. It's really great for prompting, that kind of stuff. It takes a little bit of the front end, and especially for somebody like me, I've been in this for 20 years. Now, my juniors, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit, but my juniors, we got a little bit different. Like I said, training's gonna come in on that one. I don't need lazy auditors. AI is meant to be a capacity multiplier, especially for us.
Yeah.
And I need to make the most out of my time, and I need to be able to give the best value out of it. I actually just saw a book that IA has that says clarity. It says clarity, impact, and speed. That's what we're looking for in audit profession. So how do you do that? AI embracing that, and your guys' help with that in the different areas is where we expect to see it. And I'm looking forward to what you guys are going to do next with, hey, you have this control and it's not currently mapped to any risks. These are the 4 risks that we expect that you might be good at this. Or you have an area maybe that you guys haven't done a risk assessment on. And GRC, because it's a connected risk platform, GRC's over here doing this, you guys might get some work out of this as well, especially as the platform administrator for AuditBoard. There's so many things that connect on the backside. Having AI help with that is really what I'm looking for in that space.
The whole idea is, as Melissa talked about, we want to using AI to supercharge the work efficiency, to basically multiply its capacity, because we know in audit world sometimes, it is long working hours. So there is a lot of repetitive tasks. We're hoping using technology to help you do faster, but still, any given times is totally 100% within your control. So you will never lose your sight. Whatever the technology is technology. In the end, we always believe human has to be in the loop for the AIs.
And happy for you guys too.
Yeah.
I'll say this for AuditBoard as a customer, there's a trust factor there. Working with the teams, I think we've been with AuditBoard 2.5 years now officially. And because I know the teams, because I've gone to Audit and Beyond, I've gotten to know the leaders. I've got a trust factor in AuditBoard that says I'm okay using this because I trust that you guys are doing what's needed to be done to help keep me safe on the other side of this. So I think that brand factor can't be left out of the conversation as well.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa. That's why we love you to be here. Okay, so next question, I guess I'm going to back to you as well, Melissa. So what is roadblock in your mind, right? When you're starting to, persuade your execs team to start even think about AI will be a potential technology source to help your job easier. How do you convince him, or not him or her, right? Or other execs, or your peers, or your own teams? What are some roadblocks for you, particularly when you adopt AI?
Misunderstanding of exactly what AI is, I think, is one of the first things. And I'm going to be very transparent and say age. I work for a company where our median age is definitely older, so they're not willing to necessarily adopt tech as much. I sit in the middle on that I'm older and a bit risk averse, but I'm also the person who wants to try the coolest things that are out there. And I keep going back to the 2 decades in, and not to hone in on it, but my company trusts me. So they look at me and say, okay, Melissa, what risks do we need to worry about on it? What are you concerned about in terms of this? Because I'm not talking about AI just in use for what we do for our jobs, but we've got mobile subscriber data. I've got to think about who our customers are and what are we trying to keep safe, and where are those guardrails going to be? So I think that's the biggest thing is I'm going to always go back to education. You can't just throw something out there and expect people to learn it on their own. You've got to hone in on a culture and a risk culture so people understand when you put information into here, what exactly are you doing? I'll be remiss, and I don't remember if it was Samsung or Sony, it was an S name. When ChatGPT first came out, somebody went and put their proprietary code right into it. And great, now it's out in the wild. Like, people aren't thinking about that because they aren't thinking about the risks. When you have enterprise versions of AI, your risks are a little bit more averted, but still, does my everyday practitioner, sitting there, does my admin assistant really understand that? Maybe not. So I think the onus is on the organizations to make sure you have education, but that means educating the executives as well.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. So guardrail and control, we all know this is a very key for secure adoption. Matt, back to you. So you have any advice on what kind of guardrail control we need to put in place for any company to using AI's adoption?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to being use case specific here, because you really have to focus in on what use case you want for the AI. But there are some basic guardrails that you probably want in almost all cases. things like guarantees that the company's not training on your company's data. I mean, this is a big reason you should go with like a enterprise chatbot like ChatGPT Enterprise or ChatGPT Teams, as opposed to letting your employees use ChatGPT on their personal accounts. Right? We will be training on the personal account data, but on Teams and Enterprise, we don't train on that data. That's the kind of guarantees you want. And you also want to understand the safety training that's been done on the models. OpenAI kind of was the first to release this frontier level model, but a lot of other companies are coming out with them now as well. And it's important you review things like the system card, understand like what are the really negative use cases these could be used for. And maybe you want some other guardrails around like input validation that you do on your end to ensure that the use cases it's being used for in your company are the ones you've approved it for.
Thank you, Matt. And Tom, the question for you is obviously AuditBoard. This year we're going to invest quite a bit on our AI capability. We have a few early features going to GA very soon in April. Obviously, we are going to continue to get customer feedback. We have full year roadmap developed on AI. But as an AI leader, how do you ensure the data security and privacy when we actually release the AI capability to our customers?
Yeah, I think there's a few dimensions to that. I mean, I think first of all, it's important to remember that like AuditBoard, it isn't an AI company per se. And it's so, like we don't provide AI models, like, things like 0-day retention of input data and things like that aren't actually as relevant because, our customers and hopefully our customers and our users trust us with sensitive workflows, sensitive data. And we do anything and everything to maintain that trust, right? Everything from like, we have very strong segregations of data between customers. We have strong checks on, authentication, security, we have data retention policies, classification, like we do all of that to ensure that our customers' data is safe, right? And so, when AI enters that picture, we don't break down those walls to make AI easier to, because of the risk. We don't want to break that trust. And so that's sort of a long way of saying that like, in terms of being AI specific, we will maintain those same guardrails between customer data, between leakage, having least access policies, sort of any and all things that we do currently to protect customer data. We do the same with AI tools. So like if we train a model, and fine-tune a model that's specific to a workflow for OpenAI, we will not use that model elsewhere, right? And so that's sort of at a super high level, like, our strategy. We intend not to change any rules just because it's AI.
Thank you, Anton. Let's switch to another topic, a fun topic. How are you leveraging AI to enhance audit or enhance your workflow? Maybe go with you first, Matt.
Sure, yeah. When I started at OpenAI, we were a very small company, around 200 folks, and I mentioned I was the first GRC hire, so a lot of the processes just didn't exist at that point. And I was talking about this earlier, but it's kind of funny because my very first day was the day that they told our internal employees that we could start dog fooding GPT-4, like try it out in your work, see what it's good at, what it's not good at. So that was a big day for me. And I kind of have been using it ever since, experimenting with it, seeing what it's good at, what it's not. And using it a lot too in developing some kind of like the level 1 processes, right? Just getting us off the ground, something in place. And the model is a great discriminator. I actually think it's a better discriminator than it is a generator. And what I mean by that is, if asking it to generate an essay, it does a pretty good job. But what it's really good at is you give it an essay and tell me, what would you change about this essay? This is my goal for this essay. This is my target audience. This is how I want the tone to be. And that's where it really excels. So yeah, it's great at that first draft. But the way I like to work with it is I'll have it do the first draft. Then I'll go in and kind of give it my take on it. And then I'll send it back and say, what would you change? Or what am I missing here? Critique me as if you're this person. And that's where I've gotten a lot of value, especially in communicating to audiences that I didn't necessarily have experience communicating with before, if it's as a board level communication, for example, or if I'm communicating to researchers, or if I'm communicating to engineering teams. What language should I use? What will be most effective for me in both the messaging, templating, the base levels of these processes. So that's probably been the most useful use case for me, but again, I do use this pretty much constantly. It's both my initial research tool. If I'm curious about a subject, I'll have it recommend books to me. If I'm interested in like finding new ways to do something or seeing if there's any new news out about something, I always start with it. But again, it's a start with it. You don't want to trust it implicitly at this point yet. It's you want to go verify it. You don't want to end up in a situation where you've just completely relied on it and ended up with some sort of hallucination.
Melissa, how about you? Well, I think you are our beta customer, right? I guess the first question is how you feel about our beta features, and the other question is, what do you would like to see AI to enhance your audit workflow in the future?
Especially capacity. Like I said, capacity multiplier is the first thing that's out there. I am that person who goes and asks, I'm like, AI, what are the risks of AI? And it was interesting to see what it would come up with. What are the risks of it replacing, an auditor? Just to see, because I'm always curious. I'm that person who's like, when everybody's going this way, I'm going to go that way because I'm curious to see why is nobody going this direction. So meeting notes, things like that, it definitely is, one of the quick and easy ways to do it. Being able to see for it to maybe catch things that I didn't catch when you're starting to connect data together. Being able to use it, I use it basically in place of my other search engines. I stopped going to the search engine first. I go to my Copilot. That's the one that we currently have. And say, hey, I need a formula on how to do this. Or, hey, I don't write code, but how do I write a quick script that'll go through, 1,000 lines of users, or that I can give to my team, and say, hey, here's at least a start to it. Hey, developers, I have 9,000 servers I need to audit. I need something that's going to, send this back to me quickly. But I think the other thing to remember too is that as much as we would love auditing to be black and white, and very binary as computers are, ones and zeros, it's not. I have a very bad joke that I said 50 Shades of Grey should have been about auditing, not the subject matter that it was, because there's all these nuances to it. I've been watching a couple of the tools here that it's like, AI goes through and it says, here you go, and these are the things that failed. And like, but did they fail? Is there mitigating circumstances to it that maybe it hasn't? And I don't think the models aren't there yet, nor do I know that I want them to be. There's still going to need to be a human factor that leads into it to be able to have the empathy, the compassion, hey, let's work together to figure out what this is. Are there other compensating things that are more than just the legalistic portion of things? Because that all has to be trained. And we've seen how AI can go bad. I think as ChatGPT first came out, and even Microsoft's Sydney, and it went off the rails. I think people need to understand that that's on purpose, though. You guys need to see that it's going to go off the rails so that then you know how to put the better guardrails in. So for me, it's going to be, again, I think just enhancing what you guys do in AuditBoard, being able to start connecting, especially as you add modules, being able to say, hey, I don't need to go completely re-architect this because the machine learning will go and re-architect it for us and lay out and connect the new modules together. Or offer insights that are sitting within our environment and that maybe we didn't see because we're over here only working on this piece. I think the use cases are really just unimaginable. I'm not able to actually ask it, it'll give you the use cases. But I'm gonna always go back to the education. I would like to see the education come out too. I'm actually using it for education. What you were saying for the generative piece of it, where I can put it in and say, I said it this way, this is what I wrote. Now give it to me if I wanted to give that to the audit committee. Or give it to me if I wanted to give it to my third line managers. And then I'm using that to show my auditors of, here's how you write for a different audience, rather than me having to always come up with it. So it's another tool in the toolbox. And I think that's the way we have to be able to look at it to continue using it.
Melissa, I'd love to add on to there too, because I actually have used it for the same use case with education as well. I've written privacy trainings with it, and it's great because you write the privacy training, then you just ask it, create a quiz for me on the content in this training, and it's just done. But you also brought up another really good point about like how these models work, and especially the base models, because the base models are incredibly powerful, but there's no direction. It's like asking, a 2-year-old who has all the knowledge in the world a question, and it could go in 100 different directions. And what happens is the companies put these layers on top of these models before they release them to enterprises and consumers. And it's really important that your enterprise understands the testing and safety stuff that was done on those additional layers on top. Because every company does it differently, and every company has different focuses, different, primary goals for what that model should be good and not good at. And you have to make trade-offs in that process.
I'll tell you the one thing I'm not looking forward to, though, is the day my auditors ask me for IPE on it. How did you do that? Oh, you ran it through that model. Great. I want to see the IPE on it. Oh, crap. Okay.
Yeah.
That's, I think, going to be one of the biggest, hardest things to be as we introduce more things into it is how do you get the auditors of the auditors comfortable with what you're doing and how is it doing its analytics? I'm not looking forward to that day.
Yeah, I kind of am. I'm really curious what it's going to take to get an auditor comfortable with a fully AI-driven control. Will it ever get to the point where you can treat it like a human user and test it that way? I don't know the answer to this question. I just think it's a fun thought exercise.
Yeah, last questions. Maybe everyone can just, summarize like in 1 minute. What is your most excited about the AI going forward, and what are you most worried about the AI, particularly in this GRC space? Melissa, I'll go with you first.
For me, being able to automate the most mundane of tasks, getting those minutia things off my plate, the things that still take me, 3-4 hours to do because, I've got crappy data that needs to be normalized, and I'd rather just give it to a machine and be able to figure out how to normalize this, and not have to worry about it. So that's probably the biggest thing is taking those admin level type tasks off my thing so I can do what I'm paid to do, which is, evaluate risk. As far as what am I most concerned about, I'm concerned that that we let regulation potentially hem the good part in, but not the bad part. I think I feel a strong sense of responsibility when it comes to AI that Richard Chambers calls us agents of change. We're on the forefront of risk. We have the ability to affect not just our companies, but society. And I really think we need to be the leaders in that. And so I think what I worry about is that not enough people will do that. So I have a much grander idea of what worries me about it, but not from a practitioner standpoint. I like to focus more on the things that I think it's really going to help, especially when we're having trouble, finding people to become the next practitioners. Again, this is going to start filling spaces that we don't have right now.
Matt?
Yeah. So I think both what I'm most excited about and kind of most scared of at the same time is That's a good one. But I'm mostly concerned about just the pace that the AI technology is advancing at. It's both incredibly cool and scary at the same time. This is, I think, a revolutionary technology that's coming out. And we're still in like the early days of it. It's really common at our company functions to have like a poll of when they think artificial general intelligence is coming. And the timelines keep getting shorter in our guesses just because they tend to improve faster than we predict they are. So I think that's going to be a very cool thing, especially how it can be applied to some of these spaces that are, really risk averse. And AI is such a risky technology. But, in a couple years, what will AI look like in this space? We could have like a whole different outlook on it. One thing I do think is true is that, AI is not going away. It's important that, people in the industries, pretty much all industries, understand how to work with the technology. AI fluency is going to become a requirement for job seekers. It's going to prohibit you from certain kinds of work, including risk-related work. But yeah, I think it's a fun time to be in GRC.
And Tom, about you?
I think the most exciting thing is sort of realizing what Matt and Melissa talked about, like these efficiency gains. It's a massive opportunity. I think that's why we're doubling down on it, especially like, hey, in this very, very specific context. The AGI risk, I think that's a fear that everyone has, especially those that follow this sort of broader AI world. So I'm not going to comment on that. Other than I am scared too.
Well, great. So for me, I think I'm really excited to see how AI technology continue to evolve to really just make people life better. Your work life better, your personal life better. But most scary thing for me is I feel we cannot just, without any governance policy, I just don't want people to abuse using AI, right? Because AI could be very dangerous. All of a sudden, the entire world, you don't know, because if you watch those like movies, a lot of movie, high-fi sci-fi movie that they actually predict a lot of AI work 20 years ago already. But I don't want to become myself like a Spider-Man, whatever, all the things in different universe. So that's why my most worry is how we actually channel the right energy, the passion about the AI to use, but not just to totally abuse, right? Because if you don't have you give the total the freedom, then can be very, very dangerous. Well, thank you all to welcome to the session. Well, thank our panelists for the great conversation.